Christo here from Fiscal. I'd like to introduce you to one of the tools that we use quite often for all our inventory clients, and it's called the Systems Usage Report. Now, the reason why we've developed this tool is that we've realized that once a system is implemented, we often get clients that can use all the features independently quite well, but operationally they end up not using the system as it should be used, and that really causes issues down the line. So we've developed a tool that helps us to look at certain transactions and see if they are actually being used. And what we've found is once we started reporting on this and giving the feedback to the clients, they really started understanding why their system needs to be used. And also management started to get a better idea of if their system is being used by the employees. Ultimately, what we've realized is if the system is not being used properly, the data isn't put into the system properly, and then we end up getting reports that are not accurate. And the whole idea behind implementing a system or using a system is to get better reporting so you can make better decisions for your business on a daily basis. So using the system properly is one of the key things that we like to get to for our clients, and so that we can report on accurate data and help the businesses make better decisions on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so let's jump into the report. So we look at a few different data sets to get to this dashboard view. So we look at the pending purchase orders, our pending sales orders. We look at our inventory movements, warehouse details, and sales back ordered. Then we've got a few comments, and that's just standard comments here. We've got our dates here, and then actual comments for that month. Yeah, and then it goes on from to the right here for more dates. So as you can see, we've done 2 months for this specific client. So I'll just start at the top and explain why we chose to report on each of the different aspects. So starting with purchase orders, the reason why we look at the pending purchase orders is that we want to know if there is the proper movement on the purchasing function, right? So starting out with the pending purchase orders. So if you've got a high number of pending purchase orders, it could be that you have pending purchase orders, or you open pending or open purchase orders, but don't actually receive the stock, although you might have actually received the stock in reality. Or you've got purchase orders that you've created, but you're not actually expecting to receive them. So it might be false purchase orders. So that is why we look at our total pending purchase orders. And even though in this case, having 68 is quite high, that could be the reality for this company because they might have very long purchasing cycles or many different suppliers. So as long as you can explain the high number, that is totally fine. Then we've also looked at purchase orders that are older than 3 months that are still open. Um, and once again, this just tells us a story of if the client is actually using or closing their purchase orders. Now, if you've got a client that has, or if your business has a longer purchasing cycle than 3 months, then that is okay. You can update the number here from 3 months to 6 months in that case. But the reality is, it should just be verified that this is the actual situation for your business. What is concerning for me in this case, and would almost always be concerning, is the PO's past the required by date. Now, we believe that the required by date should be updated as you get new information about when your stock will arrive. So the initial required by date should be in line with your supplier's lead time. So if it's a 30-day lead time, it should be today's date plus 30 days. Um, but as you get more information from the supplier, let's say the week before you expect to receive the stock, they say, we're only going to send you the stock in 2 weeks' time. You should update that required by date, because that gives us a big clue of when, yeah, obviously when we will expect um, the stock, but also if your POs are up to date. So in this case, we can see possibly not. A high percentage of the total pending POs are past the required by date. But then also, when you start looking at things like cash flow, when you can quite easily calculate the amount of cash that you will have to spend in the future if you look at the required by date, um, plus the accurate required by date, plus the supplier's terms. Then you know, well, if there's a big order incoming in 2 weeks, and we've got 30-day supply terms with our suppliers, we know we will have to spend that cash. So you can easily help calculate your cash flow by keeping it up to date. But in general, it's just good hygiene, and it will help with the warehouse to understand when they should expect the stock to come in. So this is quite a crucial one for me, one of the most crucial ones to look at. Then we can also look at the invoice, but not received. So we've received the invoice from the supplier, but not received the stock. So we should ideally follow up on if we're going to receive that stock or close it in whichever manner seems suitable for that scenario. And then the other way around also, we've received the stock, we haven't received the invoice. That's generally your finance team that should just be following up if there's not a bit of admin or a bit of hygiene that needs to be done on the PO itself. The units to receive and to invoice, that's just there to keep an eye on what your load is currently sitting at. So yeah, if you see a major dip in that, which you did not expect, for instance, in your units to receive, then uh, you might have to investigate and see are we actually doing the orders that we need to be doing for what's needed for our stock. Okay, that is the purchase orders side. Uh, let's look at the sales orders. So we have the same kind of idea here on the sales orders. We've got the number of pending sales orders, and that's just to make sure that we don't have just open sales orders sitting there, allocating our stock for no reason, uh, because that could also influence our purchasing decisions if we've got a lot of purchase orders, allocating stock and bringing down the availability of our stock. Then you can also see the number of units pending. So this could just be an indication of what's happening in our warehouse and what kind of workload they have at the current moment. And then also sales orders older than 3 months. Once again, something that should be closed. Unless you've got a very long sales cycle, and you can explain this, definitely something to look at. Okay. One other thing that I just wanted to note on the purchase order side is the same as the stock that's being allocated when you have open pending sales orders, is if you've got pending purchase orders that are not valid, you can actually fall behind on your stock or your purchase planning, because it could show that you are expecting stock which you're actually not expecting. So yeah, the hygiene on the pending purchase orders and the pending sales orders are very important. And I think really these are the two main pillars of our usage report. Uh, Next, I'll look at the inventory movements and the warehouse details in the next section. Okay, so what we'll look at now is the inventory movements. I've got two sections on inventory movements. I've got the summary and detail, which I'll run through in a moment. The detail is just underlying transactions of the summary, which is sometimes good to look at. But yeah, not so crucial. Okay, so obviously, if you are a manufacturing business, very important to monitor the uh, the production levels. That's quite important. So to look at the output, so how many units you've produced in the month, and the number of production runs you've done, and just check that on a month-to-month basis. You might have some, benchmark in your mind that you need to hit, but it's also just good to verify this. So if you, for instance, have uh, a feeling that you should be producing between 50 and 60,000 units, and you end up producing 30,000 units in that month, it might be an indication that you haven't actually captured, or your team hasn't actually captured all the production runs. So once again, just something to look at. And the same counts for the number of production runs. If you've got a figure, then you know more or less how many that needs to be. All right. Next up is our purchases. And this doesn't show us the number of purchase orders created or units created, well, units created for purchases. It has to do with how many units are actually received through purchases. So once again, looks more um, at your warehouse, be actually using purchase orders, so receiving stock coming in. So once again, if you know that there was a big shipment coming in, then you should see that reflected in your same with the number of units. And then you can also look at the value of the stock. So units don't necessarily always tell us the whole story, but the value in this case might help us. So same for sales. So this just shows us how many units move through sales, number of sales with stock movement. So once again, not the number of sales, but in this case, it would translate to number of fulfilled sales in most cases. And then the value of stock moved through sales. This is the cost value. So one of the others that are very important to look at is the number of transactions in your stock adjustments, takes, or write-offs. Uh, I'm always looking out for this. So I'll show you the detail in a bit, which you can also just dig into. But always just have a look at this number and make sure that this is what you expect, the number of transactions, but also the net value of the stock movement. This is quite a high value year of stock written off. And this is the number of stock or of units written off. So if something did pop up for you that doesn't make sense, just come in here and look at the inventory movements detail. So this just shows all the underlying transactions that we've just discussed. Finished goods, purchases, simple sales, advanced sales, stock adjustments, stock takes, write-offs, advanced purchases, and stock transfers. Now, in this case, let's have a look at the number of stock takes. This just seems high in general, unless you're doing weekly cycle counts of specific parts of your warehouse. This is just a high number. So once again, something to look out for. Stock adjustments also a very high number if it's not part of your flow. For this client, or for this data set and client, it does make sense. But yeah, just something to look at, and then write-offs, the same thing. Quite a large number of write-offs there. Another thing that's not reported on above is just the stock transfers. So if you are transferring between locations quite often, so maybe you've got a shop that you need to transfer stock to, it's always just good to have a quick look at your stock transfers. All right, so that is the inventory details. Now, two other things that's always good to look at is the number of orders picked and the number of SKUs picked, and this would be per user. So we've got one user, but if you use the WMS, you can have obviously multiple users, and you can actually track it per user to see their efficiency and if there are any drops in that. So very important one to look at if you're managing your own warehouse. This won't necessarily show if you use a third-party warehousing or don't use the WMS app. Right. The other thing is just the number of back-ordered sales orders. Always good to look at this. Make sure that you do fulfill those orders if they are back-ordered, because you might have clients waiting on their stock. So just a good hygiene to look at your back-ordered sales and just make sure that you actually end up fulfilling them, chasing your suppliers, communicating with your clients, and to make sure that they do receive that. Okay, so that is a quick run through of the dashboard of our usage report. And once again, this is just to give us an idea of if the client is actually using their system, to what extent they're using their system, which features they are using, and how that ultimately drives their data, and have accurate data. In the next section, I'll give you a quick run through of how this report comes together. Okay, now I'd like to show you just how more or less this report is put together. I won't bore you with all the details, but ultimately what we did was we pulled the pending POs data for the month. Um, we have a few formulas to the side here. So this is the report that you get out of Cin7 Core. And then we have formulas just giving us the status, um, and giving us the action and if there's a timing issue. So these are all old purchase orders, so past the required by date. That's, yeah, something to look at. I always just have a look through this, by the way, to just make sure like it makes sense, or more or less what's happening. But then we have a more or less a reference sheet that puts all that together and gives us a small report, which is then referenced to our dashboard. The same thing happens with the pending ESO data, and then the pending ESO's report. Got our inventory movement details data. That is a bit more complex, because we've got multiple types here, and they don't always appear each month. So these are actually static, although these are a pivot table, so they are not static. So when you drop a new report in, it might change, it might remove some of the sections, but this is a static report, and then it's actually just some ifs, to all the different reference types. Then the warehouse details, also just a export, and then once again a report created and referenced to in the dashboard. Same with the sales backorder details, export, and then the report here. So the functionality behind it is quite basic. We've obviously have our task list here, and we've got the references for some of the dates, for instance, and yeah, just references in general, to make the whole sheet work. If you are curious, of how we actually built it, just let me know, and I can give you a proper answer. Cool. Thank you for taking the time to look at our system's usage. Hopefully it helps you. And yeah, if you need anything, just reach out to us.